per capita income, if you look at this just on a raw basis, Tampa is third. You see that St. Pete and Fort Lauderdale are better than us on per capita income. You can look at the raw numbers, but you take what people earn and look at it on an average per person basis. Go to the next slide. But then what we find out by digging deeper in the numbers, and I worked with some of the best economists in the state on this, including Moaz Lemium, who was the head of the College of Business at USF, now the president of UNF. But what you find is that Tampa has an abnormally high percentage of people that make more than $200,000 a year. And so what that does is that throws our numbers off. And if you keep going, median household income, so this is just looking at the midpoint of what people earn, Tampa's third there again. Keep going. And so sometimes politicians compare us to Austin, Charlotte, and Atlanta and say, now we've caught up with the other big cities. So let's look at it. This is census data that anybody looking to come to Tampa can look up themselves. What it shows is we're not even close. We're not even moving the same trajectory. We're kind of moving up, but we're not moving the same trajectory.
So it's per capita income. Atlanta is 55,000. We have Austin 48, Charlotte 43, Tampa's down at 40, which is really significantly lower than Atlanta.
And this is 3 years ago. And as far as I recall, the disparity has gone up. Keep going. I'll show you a couple more. Keep going. So this is what people look at when they're looking to come to a community, because wherever you are on the woke scale or political scale, you can't manage a large employment base without being aware of diversity. And women in our community, to some extent, feel disadvantaged. And so if you look at the disparity in men and women workers, the difference in Tampa is 9,000. So we're out of the 6 largest cities in Florida, we're the third worst. Go to the next one. And this just shows the trajectory of it, which means that it's popping up, which means the problem is getting worse, not better. Keep going down. So this is African American Caucasian. And then what it shows is that the disparity is 32,000. So we're the second worst. And when Moaz helped me present this a couple years ago, he said, our strategy can no longer be to say that, thank God that Miami or Fort Lauderdale is worse and we're second worst. We need, instead of setting buildings as the goal, buildings are a means to get to the goal. They're part of the output, not the outcome. The outcome is how do we move people up the economic food chain?
Well, how do we move everyone up? How does everyone have a better opportunity?
Let me show you one more, because this will partly answer your question. Keep going. Next one. Oh, this is a really interesting one, because look at from 2000, the Great Recession ended in 2009.
Right.
2011, we'd already been 2 years past the Great Recession. Look what happened in the middle class. Look at that red line. For most of the decade after that, our middle class shrank.
Wow.
And people say, well, other cities did too. Well, they didn't really.
Not St. Petersburg according to the graph.
And what this shows,
Orlando.
Out of Florida cities, we're second worst in middle class. And what it means about Tampa is we have a very wealthy, happy, to some extent, upper class, but our middle class, and you'll see poverty in a second. Keep going. People living in poverty, we're second worst in the state, and we have been for 12 years. Keep going. There's one. Keep going. And anybody can find this, tampascorecard.com. Keep going. Okay, this is a really important one that answers your question.
Okay.
If you're talking about multi-generational wealth, the first thing that cities and countries do is they try to help people buy homes.
Right.
Singapore, we can't copy their plan, 92% home ownership rate. But
boy, that's
look
incredible.
At St. Petersburg, 63%.
Right.
Tampa's 50%. And the African American home ownership in Tampa is 39%. Well, have you ever heard anybody talk about the home ownership rate and how we have a gap? And then the state average is 65%. I don't even have that up there. But why shouldn't we aspire to at least be equal with the state average?
We should, but aren't there so many factors at play? Like, first of all, what's the reason behind the data? Why would we stack up at 50% where St. Petersburg's 62%? Is it because there's older, retired, wealthier people in St. Petersburg that can afford homes, that there aren't as many in Tampa? There's more younger people in Tampa? Like, there's a reason behind the data. And then what could we do locally to fix it? Isn't this more of a national policy, interest rate environment, insurance environment issue?
Well, you can look at it. It's not, if you count for differences by state or national, you look at what just other cities in Florida are doing.
Right.
So it shows that it's something that's happening here. And even St. Petersburg across the bay is better than we are. There are a lot of different factors, and the USF people are great at predictive analytics, and they're offering to help us with that. But for example, if you ask Ernest Coney from the CDC, there are 2,000 families that have been through an FHA approved training program. And this is where you go through for like 6 months and you learn how to save money. You actually have to save money, and you learn how to budget. They say once you get a mortgage, you're going to have to pay the principal, interest, the maybe maintenance fee or a budget for repairs, and you have to pay insurance and taxes. They help everybody budget all that so they're ready to buy a house. A few months ago, he told me we have 2,000 families right now who are eligible to buy houses. What we need to do is put a stock on the table. What we've been doing is subsidizing rental units, and rental units are important. We have a huge shortage of rental units, but we're never going to change these numbers long term until we allow people to buy units. And here's the thing: if we subsidize a rental unit, that's just a subsidy that goes out the door. One of the ideas that Ernest and I talked about, and these aren't the exact numbers now, but let's say he can build a house for $280,000, and somebody at 80% AMI can buy a house at 180. We could, through a city or CDC function, we could offer a $100,000 interest-free second mortgage. They don't have to pay payments. They don't have to pay interest on it. And so they just have to pay the interest and payments for $180,000. Let's say in a few years that house is, instead of $280,000, it's now worth $500,000. They get to keep all the increase. They get to keep all the equity that they get.
Yeah.
The only thing they have to do is, just as they have to pay back the first mortgage, they have to pay back the second. So they have leveraged tax dollars to make more money, to have that house, to have intergenerational wealth and homes. They can keep the house if they want, but when they sell it, that $100,000 goes back into that program.
Yeah.
And then we turn around and loan it to somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that concept is fantastic. And I think the goal of it is great, right? It's getting more people to own homes in the city. That should be a national policy. But the 180 or 250 appreciating to 500, I think, is the reason we're in this mess. The main reason we don't have home ownership is the cost of living. It's the cost of buying a home in Tampa. I probably paid double what I should have paid to buy my family a home. A few years ago, I mean, pre-COVID, you could buy an adequate home in South Tampa for $350, $400, $500 would have got you a fantastic home in South Tampa. Starter home, nothing ridiculous.
I remember Bayshore was $350, $400.
But I think this inflation, right? It's kind of the story of America, and it's not a Tampa issue. But I think there's incentives that could be put in place that would alleviate some demand pressure through increasing supply that might not necessarily lower. You don't want a sharp drop. You don't want a 15, 20% drop in housing costs. That's going to screw over a lot of people that have bought in the last few years. But you could have a leveling off or so. You could have a soft kind of landing of price appreciation. And we've kind of seen it. We've seen it through rising insurance costs, rising debt. You've seen this softening in the market here where prices aren't appreciating as quickly. But the reason why we don't have homeownership is because it costs $500,000 for a fucking starter home anywhere in Tampa. And anything below that, if hey, our budget's $300,000. I mean, people tell me that all the time. Well, you're looking at a little condo, maybe a 1970s built condo off of Zeal. Oh, well, now the HOA is $350 on that. They have to maintain this old building. Well, it doesn't work. Sorry, you're out of luck. Check. They're in the factor of, hey, we can't afford a home. But yet they have $50,000 saved up, right? So that's the issue really, is the cost of the real estate. It's just too expensive. And I think handing out money like that, I know that's a bad word. I shouldn't really say hand it out, but effectively giving that interest-free money away would only increase the demand, right? It's more money in someone's pocket. It increases demand. When you have a level supply and you increase demand, you have an increase in the price level. I almost think that
what's happening right now.
I think that might make the problem worse.
What's happening right now is that same amount of money is going as rental subsidies. So you give $1,000 a month or whatever to somebody so that they can pay their rent.
That makes sense.
And that is not a sustainable model. We can't.
So you're saying essentially switch it from a rental payment, which goes out the window,
the only
to a
way
home ownership program.
The only way to fight inflation, we can't have deflation. We can't go backwards because that'll kill everybody's nest egg.
Right.
And people are going to continue moving here for the near future. So what we need to do is help people lock in. If you lock in by buying a home, at least certain parts of it, you've locked in inflation. So for the value of the home, you've locked it in. You still have to pay repairs and insurance and everything. There will be some increase. And by the way, these people I mentioned have all gone through trading programs.
Right.
But if you're renting, if the rent is $2,000 today and we're subsidizing $1,000, and then the rent goes up to $3,000, the city and county can't keep subsidizing that forever.
I like your idea for a couple of reasons. One, you're giving more people the opportunity to purchase a home rather than rent. Number two, the city's not necessarily losing money unless there was a situation where the city had to foreclose or the property was destroyed. I'm sure there'd be insurance and all that sort of stuff. But if the city's going to make the $100,000 back and it would let a family into a home, that's a fantastic
And right
thing.
now we get zero back.
And we get zero back.
So if we
because it's all rent.
If we get any part of it, it would be better. The other thing, though, to answer your question is, I don't think we need to do it. I don't think we need more housing stock. We need affordable housing stock. We need workforce housing stock, and we need regular housing stock. Obviously, that will come through density. Either people will move farther and farther out, which some people are, or we've got to build more density.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, if you want to watch the full episode of this clip, click right here. Make sure to subscribe by clicking right here. Thank you for watching.